All right, we are live. Welcome everybody to another edition of Deconversion Stories. And today I get the chance to talk with somebody that I admire quite a lot because he's busy as fuck all the time doing production work for a bunch of different shows. And we'll get into that towards the end of our conversation. But Bull, as I always do with these things, I talk to people about how and why they left their belief systems behind, religious or not, even if they're into pseudoscientific shit. And I like to know how they first started realizing that it was nonsensical or whatnot, and the effect that it had on their day-to-day life, like with family, friends, that kind of thing, and what led you to becoming the atheist activist that you are today, and eventually becoming the producer extraordinaire, as I like to say, that you also became.
All right. Well, I mean, I was introduced to religion as a child, like a lot of people were.
Sure.
The first time I heard about God, I was probably in kindergarten. Like my parents didn't really bring up that whole concept very much. I knew, like, before that my mom was kind of gone on Sunday mornings. I didn't really know where, but for a 4 or 5 year old kid, that's it's really hard to recall whether I knew she was going to church or not. But
right.
It was on the playground, and there was another kid there who was extremely religious, and they brought up God, and I'm like, who's this God fella? Who's God? Like, well, God's kind of like Santa Claus, except you can ask him for anything, and he'll answer your prayers, right?
Right.
I'm thinking to myself, okay, because I still believed in Santa at the time, and I still it was like, okay, so I asked my parents about it, and my parents are kind of a mixed bag. My dad, I would classify him as an atheist. He's definitely he's very grounded in evidence. So
okay, sure.
I would classify him as an atheist. He never actually went to church on Sundays with me or my sister. But my mom was raised Lutheran.
Okay.
Or Catholic light, as I now like to describe it.
Catholic light, yeah, exactly.
Because so that's the church me and my sister kind of we grew up in. My sister went all the way up through confirmation, and I watched her do this in front of me. And we went to Sunday school, went to church. Once we got old enough to sit still long enough, we started attending church, and we would go through the motions. And I was always questioning, like, what is the purpose of that? Why are we going through the motions? Why are we passing this money around to the church? And I always got from my parents the real world reason for it. Like, we're giving money to the church so they can keep the lights on, or we're giving money to the church for charity, or whatever it is. They never really tried to make it sound like it was for God. Right. Which I found, like, in retrospect, it seems kind of odd. Like, if you're trying to get me to be a religious, mother, why aren't you indoctrinating me? Which is
that's what I was going to ask.
It's what it would have been. Which I thank her for this bit of wisdom, because she actually let me come to my own determination, even though she is to this day still Lutheran, still religious. Okay, mm-hmm. So I didn't finish confirmation there, but the question remained: is God real? Is God not? I would have called myself agnostic at that point in time.
Okay.
If I had known the word or had any inkling about any of this great question at that point in time, like if I wasn't. So, I went away to college in Phoenix, Arizona, and at college, I met, an older gentleman, friendly guy, who happened to be Mormon. And of course, when you're away at college, you're feeling kind of lonely. You're getting homesick. You don't have a lot of friends. And I didn't know it then. I didn't get diagnosed till I was 44, but I was autistic. So I didn't fit in socially. I wasn't out smoking cigarettes and getting drunk and doing all the stuff that you're supposed to do when you go to college.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. Nobody knows what I'm talking about, right? Of course not. So, of course, I'm looking for something to give me comfort. And so I converted to Mormonism. I even went and did the whole dunk you in a font of water, baptism, the whole 9 yards. But then it got tough. Like when you're a Mormon, you have to go through a mission. Well, here I'm a broke college student. I can't afford to go on a mission right now. I'm going to have to finish college. I would have to have had finished college, get a job, get a career started, and then take a sabbatical to even go on a mission. That's what I would have had to do. And to add insult to that injury, I don't have any transportation except a 50cc Honda Elite scooter, right? One of those little things that's 2-stroke. And I have to go to the youth state, which the Mormon church tells you which church you have to go to. You can't go to just any old Mormon church. If there's one next door and you don't fit the demographic for that church, you're going to another church. You're going to another church. And it just, I don't know if you've ever been to Phoenix, Neil?
I have not been to Phoenix. I have been to Arizona, just not Phoenix.
Oh, Phoenix is sprawled. It has got to be one of the most spread out cities I've ever visited. And I've been around this crazy world quite a bit.
Yeah, me too.
So Phoenix is sprawled out. And of course, the youth stake center was across the entire city from where I was. Where, they gave us dorms and the college there. And it was probably about a 45-minute drive on my little scooter just to get there.
Oh, you had a scooter. That's cool.
Yeah, the Honda Elite 2-stroke.
Nice. Those are wicked, man.
So, they were. I mean, it was reliable. You didn't have to change the oil because it burned it all at the 2-stroke. So you just added oil every time you put gas in it, and it ran. They would run forever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So. But they would get to there real slow too. If I had actually had a car at that point in time, I would have been, there in 20 minutes, which wouldn't have been so bad. But still, it seemed silly because there was a church like within walking distance of me.
You didn't screw with the governor at all to speed it up a little?
Oh, it wouldn't have mattered. it's that small of a scooter. I think it was actually 49 cc's. There was a threshold where you didn't have to register it, right?
Oh,
there's scooters that if they're under a certain amount, you don't actually need an endorsement to ride them. So that was it. So I didn't actually follow through with going on a mission or anything, but of course the question remains: is God real or not? I'd even to kind of wind it back a little bit. As a youth, I had gone to this Christian camp called Camp Elim, right? Camp Elim, if you spell Elim backwards, is mile. Okay, so we went there and everybody's talking about, I got saved last night. All this stuff. You know how kids are, right? They want to be part of that club. So at one point I just told somebody I got saved. I didn't feel any different though. I really didn't feel any different. So I went back home to Colorado, which is where I grew up, from Phoenix after college. And the question always percolated in my mind whether God was real or not. I didn't really have a lot of information about what the church believed. I didn't know about young earth creationism or anything like that. Oh,
you hadn't heard of that by then?
I hadn't heard of that stuff. It didn't enter my mind that strongly yet because, I wasn't.
Did they not talk about it? Or?
Well, Lutherans aren't. And I don't think Mormons are, to be honest with you. Mormons aren't either. So then I get married. And when I got married, my wife was Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
So to keep the harmony of that situation, I did convert. To Catholicism. We got married in 2001.
Wow. You really liked her.
Yeah, but we didn't have a church wedding. It was kind of interesting because we got married kind of almost, we were planning a big wedding, but then we got laid off. So we got married December 31st, 2001. Because at that point we're like, well, hell, we're not going to be able to afford a big wedding. Right. So we just went to a little church and had our friends visit and witness for us. And that was it. We were married. It was a Baptist church, but she's Catholic. I'm non-denominational at that point.
Sure.
And some things happened along the way, and I decided to convert to Catholicism. Now that was an interesting couple of years, because when you convert to Catholicism, well, it's interesting because when you convert to Catholicism, there's this class called RCIA. It stands for Rite of Christian Initiation for Adults. Although RCIA is also used for the children's classes, right? For children whose families are converting to Catholicism. It's basically catechism is what it is.
Right.
It's known as catechism outside of the Catholic Church. So you go to these classes and you learn these, you ask your questions, and they have passages that they refer to specifically to answer specific questions in the Bible. They don't really go into all the ugliness that's in the Bible. At this point, I still hadn't really read the whole Bible, right?
Yep.
I'd read parts of it. Everybody says, well, Revelation, that's like a bad acid trip.
Yeah.
So I read that. I was like, yeah, this is a little wonky. I can't say whether it could happen or not. Still didn't really know, because God's magic. He might be able to do this stuff.
Well, I heard that at one point, Revelations was considered blasphemous and wasn't even a part of the Bible until later on.
I can't confirm or deny that. It's plausible that it was blasphemous. I know it was written in the style of a lot of stories of, it wasn't meant to be Armageddon, but the actual end of a civilization in a specific region. So you kind of take that with a grain of salt. But, it just seemed like such a huge book, and it's really hard to read, and I really didn't want to read the whole thing. So I went and converted to Catholicism.
Right.
Well, turns out the Catholics don't like people of an alternate sexuality. And I'm bisexual because I was married to a woman at the time, but men still turn me on. Okay. So, and now I will just say I'm gay, because right now I'm not interested in anybody, and gay porn kind of gets me going. So my wife caught me with gay porn. My wife caught me with gay porn after I converted, and I was teaching RCIA at this point.
Oh, this seems like a contradiction.
I went from going through RCIA and going through the conversion to teaching it. And instead of, saying, hey, you need to confess, you need to talk to your priest yourself, she decides to go to the confession and spend 20 minutes talking to the priest, not about her sins, but mine. Well, I was banned from teaching RCIA at that point.
Really?
So that was a little bit of the beginning and the end for me. Okay, so I'm like, really? So you're supposed to be understanding, you're supposed to forgive sins. Yet when somebody does commit a sin and confess it, you take it out of their ability to have that community support and help you get others into that community. Huh. And it makes me feel all the more hypocritical on their part because of what they do with priests who commit things like pedophilia, for example. Mm-hmm. That really bothers me. Like, okay, so I'm looking at gay porn, and like it was, just and I get lambasted for it. and told I can't teach the word of God, but yet you're going to let priests who diddle kids, and you're just going to transfer them around and sweep that under the rug because that would be an embarrassment for you. So at that point in my head, I pretty much started seeing the Catholics as hypocrites.
Oh, yeah.
And the relationship with my wife was toxic at that point. Anyway.
Was it because of what she discovered about you?
Well, I mean, I'm sure that was part of the reason she was a little mistrustful, but she had baggage when I got married to her. I was part of her second marriage. Mm-hmm. And her first husband had been abusive to her.
Oh, boy.
So when somebody comes from that kind of a marriage and you're trying to overcome their fears of a relationship and their mistrust of everything and everyone, and she was a control freak. She was just a control freak. She wanted the last 6 years of our marriage, I was the one working. She was staying at home. She could spend $400 on Facebook games in 1 month.
Oh, fuck.
But I couldn't stop at the racetrack up the street on the way to work here and get a soda on the way to work if I wanted it. That's how bad it got. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore.
You're cutting into her Facebook funds, man.
Right. Well, and we lost a child in the middle of that.
Sorry to hear that.
My son passed away in a pool accident, and what they say about losing a child on the effects on the marriage, it either brings the two people closer together or it forces them apart.
Yeah.
So she decides that she wants another child because her biological clock is, well, to be fair, that in retrospect, it had already expired, but she didn't know that at the time. So she spent all this time trying to get pregnant, and I didn't want another child. So it was like a turnoff, right? Oh, let's hop in the sack and try to get pregnant. Well, that you just made sex no fun and mechanical at that point.
Right.
It was really hard to get into sex with her at that point because she just didn't want the same thing I did out of the relationship. Tried to make it work. It didn't. And we got divorced. Well, that's 3 religions down. Let's try one more time. There's a church by the name of the MCC, which if anybody knows what MCC stands for, it's Metropolitan Community Church, which is the church run by the LGBTQ community.
Oh, cool.
So, I thought this would be a good thing. If I really want to find out, because that was always a thing that came up in my mind, like the sin of homosexuality was a huge thing for me because I'm attracted to gay men.
Right.
So I go to this church and I'm trying to figure out what to do with my life after the divorce. And at some point I decide I'm going to become a member. So I pay to become a member like a couple Sundays before I had to go and move back to Colorado Springs from Florida. I had lived basically from 2002 after we got married, we had to move to Florida. From then on,
was this job related or something?
It was in 2000. I'm a tech guy, obviously.
Yeah.
So I was in the .com crash of the 2000-2001 after the Y2K bug was found to be more of a mosquito than the big cockroach they thought it was.
Yeah, right.
It crashed. It crashed big. So a lot of people lost their jobs. After it crashed, I worked for Wackenhut Airline Services Security Company, which is the company that was doing contract screening out at Denver International Airport. So yeah, I did the job TSA does now before TSA was even invented. And they said, They said we were pretty much guaranteed jobs with TSA. We were first to be interviewed, and as long as we could pass their interview process, we would get the job. Well, I passed with flying colors, except for the physical, because I'm epileptic. That was the one disqualifying thing.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Right. So I might have a seizure while a bomb's going through the x-ray machine and I'm supposed to catch it.
Yeah, but the likelihood of that is fairly low, isn't it?
Right. But if you were a doctor, would you want that liability? No.
Okay, I suppose not. You're right.
Getting a doctor to sign off on that was nigh impossible. I tried. I did. But it wasn't happening. So, I lost that job. My ex hadn't actually gotten a job after we lost our job together. We actually lost our job on 2001, the day we got married, like I said. So that's why we got married, because we lost our job that day.
So why not get married?
So why not get married now instead of waiting? And it was for tax purposes because it was December 31st.
Right. Okay.
Don't ever get married because it'll help someone with their taxes. Word of advice.
There you go. You learned something from my shows here, guys.
Yeah. So where was I? Oh, yes. The Joy MCC.
Yeah.
So I had moved back home to Colorado Springs, and I had to come down to Florida because I had a major seizure in 2014, and one of my friends in Florida here actually trained service dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked for Oracle at the time, and Oracle has offices in Colorado Springs and they have offices in Orlando. And it turns out that my boss worked in Orlando. So I just came down to Orlando, worked for a couple weeks in Orlando while I was training with my service dog. Mm-hmm. And then I would go back to Colorado Springs and live and work in Colorado Springs. So all that's a thing that happened. But while I was down here, I thought, well, why don't I go visit my church that I'm a member of, that I paid for a membership with? See some old friends and stuff like that. I go into the church with my service dog, and they threw a fit.
Really?
They're like, you can't have him in here, etc., which, believe it or not, is one of the few places that can legally tell you to get the hell out with a service dog.
Wow. You figured they would be one of the more accepting places.
Especially if they're run by a bunch of LGBTQ people who are supposed to be accepting of other people, right?
Yes. You'd think they would be.
You'd think they would, but they were like, well, what if someone's allergic to the dog? What if I can't go to church without my dog? Am I supposed to burn in hell? What's going on here? So that was kind of like the last church I tried. I was like, I'm done. I'm not going to try churches. I'll figure it out on my own.
Well, I wouldn't go to a church that doesn't like dogs anyways.
I wouldn't either. But I did. I figured it out on my own. I went back to Colorado Springs, started watching YouTube videos about atheists. And back in 2015, who were the big atheists? Who were the big atheists back in 2015? Well, let's see. You had Bionic Dance.
Yep.
You had Godless Engineer.
Yep.
Godless Engineer was one of the main reasons, one of the main things that people that helped me deconvert.
Right.
Aaron Ra. It was Godless Engineer's interview of Aaron Ra, very similar to this little interview we're doing here, to be fair.
I had him on
Darwin's Day of 2015. So if
cool.
you want to see that interview, go to Godless Engineer's channel. Check out 2015 Darwin's Day interview with Aaron Ra.
Actually, I think I have seen one.
That's the one that actually said, wait a second. The Bible says all this other stuff, but this is the reality that we've discovered, and here's all the evidence that proves it. Evolution, phylogeny, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, wow, I can't believe this anymore. They say the Earth is 6,000 years old. There's a whole bunch of people. That's when I found out about young Earth creationism.
In 2015.
Right. Well,
Wow.
I never really. Most people don't give a crap how old the Earth is. They really don't. In your day-to-day life, does it really affect you? How old is the Earth? No. You live. You go grocery shopping. You go to your work. Go to school.
Yeah, and if somebody mentions it, you're just like, oh, cool.
Whatever. However old you say it is, whatever. Right. So, but then I started really thinking, I'm like, so how much of this actually makes sense? So I read the Bible through and through. Twice I read that thing. I read the Bible. The first time was the King James Version. Then I read the Catholic with Apocrypha. None of it. The Catholic Apocrypha doesn't help you understand anymore. It just makes it worse.
Yeah.
Same thing goes with the Book of Mormon and stuff. Like all those expansion packs, is that what I like to call them?
Expansion packs. I've never heard that term. That's great.
Yeah, the Book of Mormon, the Pearl of Great Price, and Doctrine and Covenants. Those 3 books, they just make it all the more confusing. So I read all that stuff again, and I realized this doesn't make any sense whatsoever to me. It doesn't jive. It contradicts itself. So I was done. I was done at that point. And I was still living in Colorado Springs. I hadn't moved back down to Florida until I got my job with Infor. And Infor is where I did my microprocessor engineering. At Oracle, I was working as more of a software guy with their e-business suite, but I got back into the hardware stuff, which is what I studied in college. I was a computer engineer and major in college, so I got back into the hardware stuff. And Infor said, well, you're working from home, you can live anywhere. And I wasn't getting a whole lot of support from my family on my recent diagnosis of autism. And it's really hard to be a pedestrian in Colorado Springs in winter. So I moved back down to Florida, except this time I moved to St. Petersburg, and that's where I am right now.
Okay.
So I moved back down here.
Seems funny that an atheist lives in St. Petersburg.
Well, St. Petersburg, Tampa area, it's a big area, and there's a lot of churches in Florida. A lot, though. Just you can't walk 2 blocks without seeing one here. You really can't. But I have friends down here who had moved from Orlando to St. Petersburg, and they helped me out quite a bit when I first moved down here. And then, of course, I found the Great Debate community. Mm-hmm. So now you want to get into the rest of the story.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, well, a couple of things I want to touch on before we get into that. Has your big, how did you come out to your family that you decided to become an atheist? And what kind of effect has it had?
It actually hasn't had really big effect on my relationship with my family. My mom likes to act like I didn't tell her. Right? It's almost a denial thing. Like she'll bring up the God thing with me a lot, and she'll be like, "Well, that's not very nice to God." I'm like, "Okay, Mom, whatever." My dad, he listens, and he'll talk science with you. He's a big one on he's a big one to be a critical thinker. He's part of the critical thinking group in Colorado Springs. Mm-hmm. So they look at the writings of like Thomas Paine and Jefferson and stuff from the founding fathers and things like that tend to be more deist oriented, but I don't even think I think he would be termed an agnostic as well. Like he just it's a non-issue for him because it doesn't actually affect anything. Plugging in the God of the gaps doesn't really tell you anything. It's a placeholder. It's kind of like dark matter or dark energy. Mm-hmm. We don't know what that stuff is, it's even worse than that because we can't even really say what we would expect the effect to be. At least with dark matter, hey, that's the reason the galaxies swirl and hold together the way they are.
Yes.
Even though they don't have the mass to do so that we can see. So that's where I, and my sister's, she's very accepting of it. She doesn't really seem to mind at all. So it didn't really affect those relationships. It has affected relationships with some of my friends, though.
Okay.
I had a group of friends who are all brothers. And one of them is extremely religious. One of them is extremely critical thinking. And we get into, he's more like me. He questions. He wants you to actually think about it and come up with a reason to believe something. And then there's one that doesn't really care. But we're always getting into arguments with the really religious one. Like at one point, he said that the sun was going to keep going forever because it was special to God. Even
right.
though the sun has a shelf life of about, 15 billion more years, roughly.
I'm not even sure they can actually give you a solid answer on that because I've heard conflicting ideas of how much. Because according to one of the first things about our sun, anyways, is I've heard that it was about halfway through its life. So it may have been around for a couple billion years longer than the planets around it. So maybe, who knows, right?
Right.
We don't know.
But the point is,
the last thing that will exist in the universe is going to be a black hole until it'll be a supermassive one, and that's it. It'll blow up, and that'll be it.
But the sun itself is fated to turn to a red giant. Like
yes.
we know that much at the very least.
Yes.
It's going to be a red giant, and when it does,
swallow us up.
It will either come very close to our orbit or cross the orbital path of the Earth. In which case, we're through. We're done. We're a piece of ash in the fireplace.
Yep. if there's even any humans still around.
Well, yeah, that assumes a lot. So moved down here, found the Great Debate community, started meeting a lot of people. I became a patron of Godless Engineer, became a patron of Steve McRae, became a patron of Dator Lucum, became a patron of Bionic Dance. Just a whole bunch of atheists. A whole bunch of atheists that I became patron of. Because I liked their content and it helped me come to terms with not being somebody who believes in God. Because
sure.
it wasn't so much a void as a final answer, and I was mad that I had spent so much time on it in the first place. Because it is. When you first deconvert, you're angry because it was such a waste of time.
Yep.
It felt so, but it was also a relief because it's like, okay, now that I'm interested in reality, let's find out as much as we can. Let's go get more education. Let's start listening to people and what they have to say about it. Yeah,
everything becomes more interesting, if you ask me.
It does. Reality is far more fascinating.
Because religions have set everything. Nothing changes. And unlike reality, where everything does change, like science and whatnot. So
yeah,
it's restricted by its own dogma, pretty much.
Yes.
All right. I'm sorry. If you had something more you're going to add there.
No. I was going to say it was just that's kind of a good transition spot if you want to go that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I kind of want to know. So you obviously you stumbled upon all the YouTube atheist stuff, and you became a follower of these guys and stuff like that. But what led you to want to become like a producer for some of these shows and stuff like that? And how did you get involved with, say, because originally it was the non-sec you were involved with.
Right. Well, I had planned on doing, it's kind of interesting because I didn't start out with, the non sequitur show. I actually wanted to produce my own show because I saw these people doing stuff with their YouTube channels. I'm like, I want to do something with my YouTube channel. If you go look at my channel today, you will see some of those episodes. There's a couple episodes of Prove It. The first one being, I forget what I did it on, but one of them was actually about the flat Earth. And that Prove It was going to be about flat Earth, which in retrospect is kind of like a, oh my God, not again subject. Because their arguments just don't change. But the reason I got into it was because
you don't have a model, for fuck's sakes.
Another friend of mine brought up flat Earth to me. He says the Earth is flat. They're lying to you, and I couldn't tell. I literally couldn't tell if he was being serious or he was being a Poe at that point in time with me. And he's like, "Come on, just use your imagination." I'm like, thinking to myself, I know better than this shit. If I'm going to use my imagination, it's going to be based upon the reality that I live in. It's not going to be based upon something I know to be false.
Or it's going to have cool shit like dragons.
Right. Or it's going to be complete fantasy, right? I don't want to have, I would rather spend time with What the If. I don't know if you remember the What the If non sequitur show.
Yes.
Where we said, well, what if the Earth actually was flat? What would that actually look like? How would that have to exist?
I've seen that. I watched that very episode back in the day.
Given our physical laws, our laws of physics, what would a flat Earth actually have to look at to function the way Earth does? And it's a ridiculous concept, but it's fun. It's a good thought experiment. I'd rather do that than sit there and look at someone's picture of people standing in front of what I can tell is a white painted wall with spackle in black and white from the 70s. That's supposed to be the ice wall. That's what he showed me for the ice wall. So I'm like, I'm gonna go do all these experiments to prove, to debunk their stuff. Does this sound familiar, folks? Kind of came up with the same idea that Red's rhetoric, all them came up with.
Oh, there's so many of them now.
There's so many of them now. And
actually, one of my recent favorites is Creaky Blinder.
I love Creaky. I think he's great. I did the show with him and the actor who played Chewbacca.
Oh, really?
Show? I'm the one that I produced that show for Creaky. So
that's
it was.
That was a really cool show too.
It was too. I loved meeting him. But so I'm sitting here watching people like Godless Engineer and Bionic Dance and seeing their videos and stuff. I had no idea how any of that actually worked. I hadn't looked into it. So I'm sitting there looking into it, and I'm very detail oriented about this.
Mm-hmm.
Very detail oriented. I wanted to know what I had to do to get sound out of my computer and all this stuff. And I had to get a decent computer to do it, and so on and so forth. So in the meantime, there's the schism happening in the Great Debate community. I'm not going to go into all that, but keep in mind that's when all this was happening. I was learning about how to produce shows and how to stream and so on. Not just with Hangouts, but with OBS.
Sure, yeah.
So Frank from the Geek Room was the original producer on the Non Sequitur show. Mm-hmm. And he was producing it and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. He was also, the Geek Room. Frank was also spreading himself a wee bit thin at that point in time. They were doing The Devil's Lettuce. They were doing Let's Riff. And he was also streaming from downtown Greenville, walking around like I forget what he called the show, but it was like every morning. And eventually his wife is like, dude, you gotta cut back. You still got a family here. We need you, I guess, is what kind of the thing is. So he took a day off, and Kyle comes to me, I guess at Steve's behest, and says, hey, can you fill in? Not only as because Steve wanted the day off.
Did you say at Steve's behest?
I believe so.
Did you and Steve not get along at first?
Yeah. We got along fine, but it was, I guess it's Steve's suggestion. I don't know.
I see. Okay.
Right. Kyle came to me to be not only a a co-host on a show, but to produce it because Frank needed the day off. So my first show on the Non Sequitur show was the Telltale Atheist, myself and Kyle Curtis.
Mm-hmm.
So I just did what I had learned to do with streaming at that point, and I streamed it in 1080p. The world loves a good picture.
Yep.
I got compliments galore because Frank, he's a good producer. He knows his stuff, but his internet sucks and he can't get better internet. So he couldn't do 1080p. He was streaming in like 480 or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
So Kyle basically asked me to take over at that point.
Oh, okay.
And the rest, as they say, is history, because the Non Sequitur show is kind of a sore spot for me, because I'm the one that was in between these two grown-ass men that should have been able to talk to each other.
Yep.
But for Kyle's inability to communicate. And anybody who thinks Kyle was in any way not responsible, I'm telling you right now,
we've learned otherwise. Don't even worry.
He is. Like he was the one that was tough to get a hold of. He was the one that if you did and tried to bring it up and say you need to fix it, it just kind of stagnated. My original request when I first started producing was like, hey, I was trying to do my second show at the time, which is called Bring Your Best, which I do with Vito D'Amico.
Mm-hmm.
I said, can you make some sets for me for this? And they were simple sets. Go watch Bring Your Best. It's not a complicated show. But I made those myself. I was supposed to get those as payment from Kyle for the first couple weeks of shows, and I never got them. And it's not that I didn't ask him for them. It's not that I didn't ask for them. I reminded him multiple times and never got them. And it just, I kept doing it because I enjoy doing it. It's fun. It's a distraction. I had lost my job in May of that year.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, right about the time I started producing it. So it became the hobby.
I remember you mentioning that stuff back then too.
Yeah, it was the hobby I used. It was the distraction. Well, it's still a lot of work. It's still a lot of work.
Oh yeah, it's a job, really.
It really is a job, especially with the number of shows I cranked out. I looked at it. There's 500 streams that I produced at least in the course of a year and a month.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot of work.
It is, yeah, absolutely. A lot of people don't really understand how much work gets put into doing stuff. Even just this live stream. I mean, when I come home from work, I'm on the computer right away and I'm setting everything up and I'm doing some promotion and I'm doing whatever I can. And it takes me about an hour, give or take.
Yeah. And this
an hour
is
doesn't sound like a lot, but it's time consuming.
It is time consuming. And this is StreamYard. StreamYard is actually a thing that makes it easy to do. From a technical perspective, it's actually easy to do StreamYard.
Yep.
If you look at some of the Non Sequitur shows streams, particularly take Debate Roulette. Debate Roulette takes 4 people to run. It takes the 2 hosts, me producing. David McGinnis was on the Discord server getting people, and there was and he was setting up the spinners and all that stuff that we used for the dynamics of it. And then there was another person sitting in the Discord server getting people into the room that had actually voted on. So it was complicated. And I used a virtual machine to get the sound from Discord to mesh with the sound from vMix and the vCall that we were using at that point in time. So it's a technically complicated show.
It's not an easy task to do that, to matching the sound.
Sound is the bane of the streamer's existence.
Yeah,
it really is.
That's true. I mean, luckily this is all built-in shit, so it automatically does what it's supposed to do. But I know that sometimes when you use 2 different programs and you have to blend everything, it can be a nightmare.
Well, if you want, like, you'd have to have the Windows stereo sound just to get the Windows stereo mix device, just to get sound from your browser to go to a stream.
Yep.
If you don't have that device in your system, you're going to have to hold your phone up to your speakers to get sound in or something.
Yeah, yeah. Which would just sound horrible.
People do it. People do it all the time.
I know.
They can't fix it. It's not something that, if you're not technically minded, you don't really have time to figure out and fix all the time either.
Mm. Now, going back to your time as a producer for, we'll say like some of the shows that you did, which guests stand out in your mind as being some of your favorites that you've been able to work with?
Misha and Jerry Griffith, both of them are outstanding people.
Fucking smart.
Smart as all hell. Smart as hell. Misha and Jerry are kind of going through a tough time personally right now, and I totally empathize with them.
Heard a little bit about that,
and I am really sorry to hear about what's going on there. And see, there was Maggie Bryson, the Egyptologist. Mm-hmm. Love her stuff about the pyramids, and I also like Rick Ufrak, the coins. Coin guy.
Yeah.
Ancient coins, because the coins were propaganda. That's something a lot of people don't realize. Coins were propaganda back then.
They still are, kind of.
They still are, kind of, yeah. Hey, look at this president. We got Lincoln. We've got, George Washington. We got all these pictures of important people from our history on our money.
Yeah. That's right. And you're right. It's a form of monetary political propaganda, I guess, to sort of put a name to it, because they're putting their faces out there via a currency that people use. So everyone's going to see it.
Yeah. Everyone.
Well, everyone that uses those currencies.
Right.
Nowadays, here in Canada, we have started putting, maybe not non-political, but we've been putting other faces on there rather than just the Queen or our prime ministers. We've been putting other people that were influential in society. Don't you guys have some scientists on yours, or is that some other country? It might be the Euros. I think there's one. We're getting them. They're actually looking for a new face to put on the $5 bill here in Canada. But our new $10 bill has, her name's not coming to me, but she's basically our version of Rosa Parks. She was the first Black woman in Canada to stand up for Black rights and stuff like that.
Cool.
And now she's on the $10 bill. And it's weird because you know how you always pull out a bill and it's this way. Well, our new 10s are this way. You have to look at the picture this way now, which is different. Wow. Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's interesting. Definitely. And they're still purple. So it's like Monopoly money. It's a lot of people. Yeah, it's pretty cool shit. I'm all for getting rid of the fucking monarchy anyways. So, definitely put better people on our bills.
Yes.
Our queen's still on the 20. Our queen, the queen, is still on the 20.
It's kind of Canadian politics and the relationship with Great Britain is kind of weird. And now that Brexit's happened, it's going to get even weirder, I'll bet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, more than likely. Oh, yeah, that's right. They're out now. I forgot about that. They did that the other day.
Yep. They finally did it, even though they voted it in, 3 years ago at this point?
Something like that.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see how that pans out, if you ask me.
It is.
Because I still think they're going to honor both the British pound and the euro, I think, as currencies in England. So, a tourist shows up there and all I've got are euros, they're not going to turn them away because they can still get whatever value they can out of it. Speaking of dance, she just
they'll
mentioned.
there'll be an exchange rate, just like there is with any other currency. Just like there always was with the British pound and the Canadian dollar and the US dollar. There's always an exchange rate. In fact, I looked at the British pound right after Brexit, and that day it went up. This doesn't sound like a lot, but it is for a currency, 0.78%.
Oh, yeah. That's big. That's
a big jump for a currency in one day.
I mean, I've always thought I can only remember one point in my existence here in Canada where our dollar was actually stronger than yours by maybe 14 cents, I think it was at the time. But that was the only time. And then all of a sudden, we've always been about at least 10 cents below yours. But right now, I think it's like we'd have to spend like fucking $5 million to get a US dollar or something like that right now. It's like, it's ridiculous, the difference between them. It's not that bad. I'm obviously I'm exaggerating, but
yeah.
But you get the idea.
Yeah, it is. I do.
But, whatever. I mean, our money's money. If I spend it faster than I make it anyway, so who cares?
Yeah, who doesn't?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm trying to save up for the Faithless Forum again. Right.
So after the Non Sequitur show broke up, I did produce for Scientist Mel in the Geek Room for a while there. I don't really want to go into the reasons why I stopped for that. Suffice to say, it's a sticky situation, and it's not really something I would like to go into very deeply.
You don't need to, man. This is sort of stuff that if people really want to know, they can go look it up.
Right. And the other, of course, I produce for Pimp Monk, and Pimp Monk,
he's hilarious.
He's hilarious. He is. I love that guy. And I'm helping him out a lot. I'm working with Landon Knoll and David McGinnis on stuff for him. There's some big stuff coming up for him very shortly here.
He's funny. The first time I met him, he made fun of me right away, and I liked him instantly.
Well, he does. He makes fun of everybody. That's his brand of comedy. If you're there, you're fair game, point blank. So, and the people who've been on Pimp Monk's show, I love them all to pieces. I love Missy. I love Animancer. I love Dwayne. I'm trying to think who else is on there. Luna Paxton. Luna Patrice Saxton. Sorry. So they're all good. They're all good people. And the show is a lot of fun to do. Doing some small stuff for Steve McRae. Caffeine Corner in the interim.
Actually, Chesh is my next guest coming up this Wednesday.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then, of course, recently I was approached by Nick from In Time to produce In Time. So I'm going to be producing In Time too.
Nick and Ansgar.
And I'm also working with The Shills right now.
Oh, yeah.
So the Shills, I'm going to be doing their Friday show. And then Taddy's going to be doing Saturday show. And they're changing their branding to EIE, Education, Information, and Entertainment. So it's the I Network, and they're going to have a lot more shows. I've already done one for Logical Troglodyte, and that one was a lot of fun. We had Cy Strikling on that one, so
yeah, what a fucking shock that was. Like,
Cy Strike it's a great loss to the community because
absolutely. He was such a good guy.
He really was. He had a great heart and a really smart guy. In fact, he is one of the reasons I even found the Great Debate community in the first place, because he did a collab with Apologia.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, long time ago, did a collab with Apologia where they did one episode was on Apologia's channel and the other episode was on Cy Strike's channel. And I'm like, well, who's this like I love Paula Gia. Paula Gia was one of the atheists from 2015, right? That kind of sucked me in.
That's around when I first met him or first saw him.
Right. Well, he's doing this collab with Sidestrike. I'm like, who's this? Why is this kind of creepy pug talking on screen, right? So I started watching Sidestrike, and then movie night came along, and I can only stand so much movie night all at once because I get tired, man. Those streams go for like 8 hours when Sidestrike did them. It's a 3-minute video. It takes you 8 hours to get through it. But that was his shtick. So
my friend Zach didn't even know what happened to Sidestrike. Unfortunately, was killed in a car accident.
Yes, unfortunately.
My friend Lavender Lady, she had just seen him, like literally the day before.
Yeah,
it hit her really hard. She couldn't even make an appearance on anything for a couple of days after that, which I get.
It hit all his close-knit friends. Hit them all really hard, like Jared from AT2 Productions, Red's Rhetoric. I'm pretty close with all those people at this point because Red's Rhetoric that community is the one who did a lot of fundraisers, along with Frank from the Geek Room. Did a lot of fundraisers for me when I was down and out and having a hard time financially to get through. Because a lot of personal stuff happened during the year I was off work. It's a pretty big blow to lose a $90K a year job. It really is.
Yeah.
So I got evicted, and then I got evicted again because the people who I was subletting from weren't paying their rent.
Shit.
And then I ended up I'm where I'm at now because Red's Rhetoric found me the room, and I can afford to stay here regardless of whether I'm working or not. So,
well, that's good.
It is. It's a very big relief to have this place.
No kidding. Yeah, it must actually put you way at ease now, knowing that you're going to have a roof over your head regardless.
Absolutely.
So that's a huge concern. Definitely would be for anyone.
Critical Cripple does make a salient point. He did die from a heart attack. The car crashed as a result.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah, I could have clarified. I suppose I should have.
Yes.
My fault, Zach. Zach had no idea that he was gone, so.
Right.
Which I find really bizarre because I thought everyone knew.
There's always something.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to? Why don't you shill some of your stuff out there, Boole, and we can jump into an after party for a little bit.
Well, see, we covered Pimp Monk, we covered the shills.
Speaking of chills,
go subscribe to those channels if you want to see more of my stuff.
Oh yeah, Pimp Monks is fucking hilarious, man. So definitely check his stuff out.
Yes.
The Morning Wood is a good one.
The Morning Wood, that's the one I do.
Yeah.
I'm at one point, and I'm going to send them another message soon because it's been a couple months at this point, but I'm still trying to negotiate with the Seventh Rule podcast. The Seventh Rule is a podcast run by it was started by Aaron Eisenberg and Sirach Lofton, and if those names sound familiar, you are a Star Trekkie. They were Jake and Nog from Deep Space Nine. They started a podcast called The Seventh Rule. Aaron Eisenberg, unfortunately, did pass away in 2018, but Jake, Sirach Lofton, and Ryan T. Husk are running that podcast. But I feel like it could do with some pizzazz. It's it's woefully undersubscribed. If you're not subscribed to them and you're a Star Trek fan, go subscribe because they have people on, like, just people from the series we're on. Like, they've had Garrett Wang on, they have Nana Visitor, they've had
cool,
all kinds of people on that show.
How do I get those people on?
Terry Farrell. Like who wouldn't want Terry
First thing
Farrell?
I saw her in was Hellraiser 3.
Hellraiser 3. Yeah, she was in that. Wasn't she in Fast Times at Ridgemont High too? Or is that someone else I'm thinking of?
You might be thinking, I don't remember her being in that. I think she would have been a little too young at that point. She's Googling.
Yeah, I'm pulling up her IMDb. I want to be clear on this. I don't want to give out misinformation, especially if I'm going to be producing their show. But they've had people on from. They've had Armin Shimmerman on, just basically everybody from Star Trek.
You know who was in Fast Times at Ridgemont High that not too many people actually know about? What's his name? He was played Ghost Rider just recently. Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage was in that movie. He played a fry guy in the restaurant that Judge Reinhold was working at. You only saw him for a brief minute. And the only reason he got the part is because he was the nephew of one of the producers.
Okay, so her big debut was in '84. She was in one thing before this, but she was in Paper Dolls, the TV series. Laurie Castle.
Dolls, yes, I remember that show.
She was in an episode of The Cosby Show. These are just the highlights here. She was in the episode of The Twilight Zone, the '86 series, not the old one. Quantum Leap, Hellraiser 3, you mentioned.
Yep.
She was in Red Dwarf, believe it or not, in 1992. Yeah.
Wait, the British one or the American attempt?
The TV movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Seen him. Why did I not recognize her? That's bizarre.
Well, I think it was probably because she was made up as a cat. She was one of the cats from the movie, I think.
Oh,
obviously not Cat himself,
not Jules, but
right.
Yeah.
Obviously, she was in Deep Space Nine. Becker.
Yeah, Becker too. Yeah.
Renegades, the TV series. She plays Jadzia in that, the Requiem. So, and she's in a pre-production TV movie called Storyville currently right now.
Cool. She's good. I liked her. I've always liked her. Well,
and there's that, and then Animancer and I are thinking of doing a call-in show where we discuss various topics.
Cool.
So that might come to fruition too. So
I'd watch that.
Yeah.
Oh, Mikey's here. Mikey the Deviants. He's boo.
Hey, Mikey, how are you?
Mikey's one of my favorite fucking people.
I love Mikey.
We had an instant connection when we first hooked up, hooked up. That kind of sounds weird, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Well, is there anything else you want to throw out there? Like, your channel?
I don't really do a whole lot of stuff. I'll do technical tutorials on my channel.
Yeah, he's got how to run like OBS and shit like that if you guys are interested.
Right, and I'll do more of that if requested. Those are kind of by request. Somebody wanted to know. Recently, I can't imagine why people wanted to know how to tell if an email was fake. Won't go into why. But I started with DNS. So far, there hasn't been much call to do the rest of it because it's pretty dry stuff how DNS and email and all that stuff functions. But if you know the nuts and bolts of an engine, you don't think it's gerbils. You realize there's pistons and cylinders.
Gerbils. So. It's funny you mentioned that. At a parts store I worked at years back when I used to drive auto parts, one of the guys that worked the counter, every time you asked him what size engine, he always goes, so how many squirrels? Six squirrels. Oh, it's a 6 squirrel. Okay.
It's a 6 squirrel.
Yeah. Which was pretty much the only redeeming hilarity factor of that guy because he was a complete fucking douchebag. But anyway, he didn't last too long.
Yeah. Well, he works at an auto parts store. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with people that work at auto parts stores, but there's a lot of auto parts store that
What are you saying, man?
employ some really wrong people. Just saying.
Yeah. Well, I was a starving musician at the time, so any job was good enough for me.
Yeah.
Now I'm a scientist. Yay! Sort of. I'm a hack chemist for an environmental company. All right. There.
A hack chemist for an environmental company.
Yeah. There you go. This organic chemistry shit. It's easy peasy. Somebody sitting out there in the audience probably going, easy. I hated chemistry.
I liked chemistry, but organic just.
Oh, I love it.
It got to me. It was quite boring. I was more into crystalline stuff, which is why semiconductors.
Sure.
I'm an electronics guy, hence my name, Booleanenator.
Yeah.
That goes back to digital electronics for those of you in the audience who don't know. And so.
Well, awesome. Well, Bull, man, thanks for fucking doing this with me. I really appreciate it. It's great.
Yeah, I enjoyed this a lot.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it when people say that because sometimes I wonder if I'm doing it or not, So, So, also, thanks you guys for tuning in and hanging out with Booleanenator and I. I hope you guys enjoyed the chat. If you did, and you want to help out, give this video a like and hit the little bell icon if you want to be notified the next time I go live, because you should be. And also, if there are other ways to help support the show. If you want, you can become a Patreon, and I highly suggest you could also become a Patreon of Booleanenator, which I now, by the way, while we were chatting, I snuck the link to Booleanenator's Patreon in the description box below because I had originally left it out.
I appreciate that.
No problem. And I got all his links. You can find him on Twitter. You can join his Facebook page if you like. You can follow him there. I've got what was the other one we were talking about earlier? Was it starts with an S that for some reason
it's Subscribestar. For those of you who don't like Patreon, because Patreon seems to be kind of doing some not Facebook, but YouTube like shenanigans.
Yeah.
You can always hit me up on StreamYards, or not StreamYards, Subscribestar.
Subscribestar, yep. Yeah, so I got all the relevant links for Booleanenator down below, so check it out for sure. He does a lot of great work for our community by hosting or by producing a lot of shows. All right, and I totally take my hat off to you for that, man, because that's a lot of hard work. And
if somebody, I'm always open for my brain to be picked on the subject. Like if you need help, people need help, they can always DM me. I'm more than happy to help you help yourself if that's what you want to do, Help me help yourself. Yeah, well, yeah, he's the guy to talk to if you're looking for tech advice and stuff like that, guys. We are going to do an after show if you're interested in coming in. And yes, I did see you screaming at me there, Brandon. I saw you. I'll send you a link. Don't worry. I think he wants to come and say hi. We will be going at probably in a few minutes because I'm going to take my usual little break between them and go have a quick cigarette and take a piss, and then I'll come back and we'll get going. So we should probably be able to go for probably a little over an hour anyways, because I have somewhere that I have to be tonight. I'm still dealing with my mom and her losing her boyfriend this past week. So I'm going to go up to her place and just try and perk her up a bit because she called me earlier and she wasn't really in a good headspace. So yeah, it's been pretty shitty here for her for the past couple of days. So I like to pop in there as much as possible to cheer her up. Yeah, definitely.
And so we'll do it. We'll definitely go for at least an hour, guys. So if you're interested and you want to come and join Booleanenator and myself, let me know and I'll send you a link either through Twitter, or if you're not on Twitter, I can do it through Facebook as well. And yeah, other than that, like I always say at the end of these episodes, like the late great Christopher Hitchens once said, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. And we'll see you guys next time.